Good afternoon and welcome everybody to our second webinar in our IT cost optimization series that we've been running. My name is Nick Kervin. I am the partner for technology advisory here in Adelaide at BDO. I have been working in IT for almost 30 years, so graduated with a computer science degree in 1992, which was the last time we all experienced a recession, and entered the workforce at the tail end of that recession. So I know a little bit about what we're about to enter into, and yeah, I've held many different roles, including operational, strategic, and consulting positions, and I've been providing professional services for about the last 12 years. Today's presentation will cater for a few different stakeholders. So I know that we've got people that are registered who are working in the financial elements of a business, and then IT people as well. We've also got people that will join us from smaller enterprise up to the larger businesses in South Australia. So welcome. I hope you get something out of today's presentation and hopefully take a few nuggets away to help with getting your IT cost optimized. As I mentioned last time, the reason why we are running this series is that we believe that with the global and Australian economy entering into a recession, we think that costs are definitely going to come under pressure, operating and capital spend. So we've designed this series to provide everyone with a few tips and tricks and ideas on how they might be able to optimize the way that they use their IT and the way they spend money on it. Firstly, the slide next will just talk about housekeeping. So for those of you that haven't used GoToMeeting before, you are muted. I can't hear you, so you can talk and do whatever you'd like. If you do have questions, please fill them in. There is a questions pane and I'll answer them as we go. I'll also break at logical points through the presentation just to take a sip of water and also answer any questions that you might have. I'm happy to see what I can do if you've got anything that pops up into your mind. There will be the ability to download the presentation slides as a PDF after this session. If you do have any technical difficulties, please click on the support button, which will be in the GoToWeb app. And past this session, you'll have an email sent to you, which will include the presentation slides, a link to the recorded session in case you want to go back and listen to my beautiful voice. You'll have access to past and future webinars and contact details about myself. All right, so we are now, as I mentioned before, into the second webinar. Our first webinar covered off some immediate elements of IT cost optimization that you could look to address, and included low-hanging fruit, service level and infrastructure optimization and vendor management. Today we're going to be talking about asset management, IT management and self-service. And then next month in July, we'll be then having our third webinar, which will take a longer view on cost optimization, and we'll discuss portfolio management, cost optimization programs, and transparent IT. Why would you invest in optimizing IT costs? Some of the reasons why you might embark on such a program or initiative is to get greater value out of your investment in your IT systems and services. Over the last few decades, IT has undoubtedly become a core component of all businesses, and investment in this space has easily matched its increased usage across the business world. And over time, obviously systems and support services, etc., can get bloated, and like all businesses, there's always opportunities to look at the value that you're getting out of the investment you're making. Optimizing your IT can also help with freeing up resources, including your IT staff. And if you're able to free those resources up, you can possibly get them to look at more value-add services or activities, which adds greater value to the IT function within your business. Investing in a IT cost optimization program also demonstrates prudency. It can display transparency and also increase the confidence in IT from other areas of your business. It will demonstrate that you're taking control and showing leadership, like all business units, being able to demonstrate that you are optimizing the way that you deliver services will demonstrate that you are taking control of your area of the organization. It will help you reduce costs, and in some cases, which we'll talk about later in the presentation, will confirm some compliance or help with confirming compliance. And the right optimization program can also increase business ownership in helping optimize IT costs. So this shouldn't be a project or an initiative that's taken solo by IT. Definitely suggest that you talk to the business in how they can also take ownership in optimizing the use of your IT assets and investments. One of the important elements to appreciate when undertaking an IT cost optimization initiative is that you're going to get the best value out of taking a structured approach. So I mentioned before that we launched this webinar series in parallel to the world entering into a recession. However, IT cost optimization should really be built into your DNA as an ongoing discipline. So this shouldn't really be an activity that you undertake for a short period of time. You will get some value out of that, but we believe that structuring IT cost optimization and making it part of the day-to-day operations is going to provide much greater value for your organization. A structured approach will also help gain maximum value out of your tactical and strategic initiatives. So today, I'll probably talk through a number of different tactical and strategic opportunities. And if you don't place some structure around the investment that you're making in this space, you potentially will focus too much in one area and possibly not enough in another, or you won't have the balance right between tactical and strategy. Another point to highlight is that you may actually need to invest some money to save money if your cost optimization program actually requires you to spend some money. You need to carefully consider that investment, but ultimately any investment that you make should result in a saving of some type. There are savings to be had. I generally will tell people that there is savings. It's just a matter of taking a structured approach to analysing and understanding where those savings exist. And I'm happy to challenge any client to be given a set of data to analyse, and we generally are able to find some areas that will provide some cost savings when appropriately investigated. And finally, having a formal IT cost optimization approach will also help maintain focus. As I mentioned in the first point, if this is just a once-off that you do over a couple of months, you may get a little bit of value out of it. But if you put a structured approach in place, it helps maintain focus and slowly change your culture to appreciate that there is always opportunities to optimize your IT services and function. So today we're going to talk about 3 focus areas. The first will be on asset management, and this will discuss optimizing your software and hardware asset management. The second focus area will be around IT management and how IT structure and management can contribute to IT optimization. And the third focus area will be around self-service, and that is an opportunity in utilizing self-service to free up your IT resources. This concept has been around for at least the last decade and provides ample opportunity to optimize IT. There's my light going off again. I'll turn the light back on. And we will cover off some opportunities that may be available to you in this space. So, IT asset management, which is also generally shortened to ITAM. So the first slide is essentially describing the elements of asset management when you look at it from a life cycle perspective. So asset management isn't just about tracking assets. It is essentially a end-to-end process, and the slide describes how Gartner has identified essentially 5 different phases of a asset's life cycle, from requisition, procurement, the deployment of the asset, the maintenance of the asset, and eventual retirement. Some of Gartner's analysis has actually suggested that only 35% of organisations have a level 3 proactive ITAM maturity. So if only 35% have reached that level of maturity in which they're proactively managing IT assets, there'd definitely be a very large percentage of the business world that has an ad hoc or even zero IT asset management function. So 35% seems to indicate that there's plenty of opportunity out there for organisations to strive to be getting to that proactive level 3 maturity level. The life cycle that Gartner, or the Gartner example provides, really needs to be covered and built into your IT processes. So it's not a standalone set of 5 steps. Careful consideration needs to be given as to how these elements are actually built into the day-to-day processes that IT carry out. And as I mentioned before, asset management isn't just about tracking an asset, although that is one element of it, and a very valuable element. It's not the complete goal. And similarly, it's not all just about configuration management as well. It requires formal processes and supporting tools to make this truly effective. And if you are interested in the ISO standard, there is actually a standard that exists that caters for IT asset management, and that is ISO 19770. And with the lovely help of Google, if you are able to do some research, you'd be able to get access to that standard to understand exactly what the standard describes when it comes to asset management. When you're considering asset management, an important step is to understand the objectives that you're looking to achieve. So any investment in this space needs to have these objectives clearly stated, so that you can ensure that all the activities that you're undertaking or investment that you're making are contributing to the achievement or the reaching of these goals or objectives. And some of those objectives that many organisations generally gravitate towards or identify that they're looking to achieve includes the reduction in the number of suppliers that provide either software or hardware to the organisation. And if you're able to consolidate and reduce the number of suppliers, this potentially gives you the ability to have greater bargaining power. I've worked with a number of businesses over the years that over time have essentially built relationships with many different suppliers. They buy one type of asset from one. They may buy the same asset but a different version from another. They may buy assets from 10, 15, 20 different suppliers. With some careful analysis, it might be actually achievable to reduce that number of suppliers down, hence providing greater purchasing through just a smaller number, and that may actually provide you with the ability to go in and negotiate some cheaper prices and reduce the cost for buying IT assets. Another objective that you may wish to consider is around service optimization and reducing unused or unnecessary support contracts. So again, reducing the number of organisations that you purchase assets from and carefully considering all the assets that you have, there may be the opportunity to actually consolidate and reduce the number of unused or unnecessary support contracts, and that will then make your services far more optimised. The third objective is to get effective asset use out of each of these devices or pieces of software that you're purchasing. And an effective asset management program can lead to effective redeployment of licenses or assets and save your organisation dollars. I've seen many examples of IT groups that have stacks and stacks of laptops just sitting there unused, not being redeployed or reused by areas of the business, and those assets just sitting there are essentially costing money. It's a sunk cost that's not being utilised. Similarly, on the software side, there's many instances where a license is purchased, the individual may leave or not even need the license anymore, and there's no ability for that software license to be redeployed, which we'll talk about a little bit further on. With effective asset management, you can generally avoid overpaying at the end of an asset lease or purchase agreement. So many organisations enter into fixed-term asset leases or fixed-term agreements, purchase agreements, and if you don't have a clear mechanism to alert you when those leases are coming to the end, many suppliers are quite happy for you to keep paying on a month-by-month basis. It's a bit similar to your own mobile phone. I'm pretty sure Telstra will sign you up for a 24-month contract with your iPhone. That 24-month contract essentially pays for your iPhone and connectivity to the service. And if you don't contact them at the end of 24 months, they're going to continue to charge you the same amount that you've paid previously, even though you paid the asset off. It's not only very expensive to do that, but you're essentially paying for an asset that's already been paid off. So if you don't have your life cycle under control and know when your asset leases and purchase agreements are ending, then you're potentially throwing money out the door with your suppliers. Another objective that you may wish to consider is reducing the effort and costs for audits and compliance requirements. You may even get to the point where you can avoid audits. So with software licensing specifically, there may be times in which your business will have Microsoft or another software supplier request an audit. That is generally called for when they think that you may have actually been using more of their software than you've been paying for. And that can be a very costly exercise to go through. Costly because there's a lot of time and effort that goes into actually assessing how many licenses are used and how many you've paid for. And in some scenarios, software license details can be spread everywhere. If they're purchased on a per device basis, then you may have licenses hidden in drawers or stored on folders on the network, and getting them all together to understand what you paid for might be quite difficult. If you're able to optimize the way in which you manage your software assets, then the compliance requirements will be very straightforward. And if the supplier of the software actually believes that your processes are mature and under control, then they're going to potentially avoid coming in to audit you, a bit like the ATO. If the ATO thinks something might be a bit dodgy, they're going to put you on the hit list, but if you're a squeaky clean, they're generally going to leave you alone. The second to last objective that you may want to consider is improving confidence and IT brand by being on top of your asset retirement. As an end user, if you are able to demonstrate that you know exactly when the device that you're using is due for renewal, and you can describe to that user the process for getting a new device, which will ultimately help them in their day-to-day work, then confidence in IT, understanding and having control over their assets will increase. And the final one, which has obviously become very topical in the last decade or so, is reducing waste. So if you have a very mature asset management life cycle in which you're not over purchasing and you're not then buying more hardware or devices that have metals and other electronic components in them, which eventually are hard to recycle, then you can then point to reducing ultimately landfill and waste at the end of the process. So this has become quite important for many organisations to demonstrate that they're not essentially buying too much and adding to the overburden of e-waste in the environment. Looking at hardware, so when you're thinking about hardware asset management, there's a number of categories that you need to consider, and three core key areas that you may wish to investigate is your core infrastructure, including your servers and storage. If you still have hardware on site and you haven't migrated to the cloud, you will probably have some core infrastructure sitting in a data center or a storeroom, or a small DC on site. The other asset category to consider is network, which includes switches, routers, and firewalls. And the third category for hardware is end user devices, PCs, laptops, tablets, and mobile devices, etc. So these categories generally have different characteristics. Core infrastructure and networks are obviously generally quite expensive. End user devices are generally less expensive. However, you potentially have more because a user can have multiple end user devices, whereas your network and core infrastructure quantities will generally remain quite static. And many organisations will have tools to identify assets on their network, and those tools are generally already made available with the operating systems and core infrastructure that businesses run. However, even though they can identify the assets, most businesses don't have an overarching focus on the actual hardware asset management. So even though they can identify them, they generally don't have any process on top to efficiently manage them. But if you're looking to start out with hardware asset management, this is a good place to actually start, because you need to begin with an inventory. And most IT functions should be able to get a list of all the assets that are connected to the network, and that is your starting point to begin the process of improving your hardware asset management. Moving forward from understanding your inventory, you still require dedicated processes and resources to maintain and drive benefits. So even though you may get to the point of getting all of your hardware assets into a spreadsheet or some sort of system, you still need to think about the processes that sit around the outside of it, the integration to a lifecycle framework, and some resource allocation to managing the lifecycle to drive benefits out of essentially getting greater asset management of your hardware devices. And lastly, on asset management is software. Software assets can be a little bit more challenging, and the reason why they can be more challenging is the layer of complexity that can be added in with respect to licensing models. So hardware is generally a lot simpler. You go off, you buy the piece of hardware, it comes to you in a box, you unpack it, you commission it, and then you start using it. Software is a little bit more complex because of the way in which there can be multiple different ways of software licensing. So we have examples out there of free software. We have examples of software that you buy for just once, and you can use it for as long as you want. You've got software that is a license based on the number of users. You've got software that is based on an annuity license, in which every year you have to pay for access to that license. So this is where it becomes quite complex, and many businesses have a variety of these different software licensing models. There's no business that has been successfully able to negotiate just one licensing model. Unfortunately, everyone is at the mercy of the provider of the software as to what the model might look like. So therefore, understanding each asset and how they're licensed can add a certain layer of complexity when trying to gain control. The implementation of a software asset management program should include the following 5 phases, and this is obviously can be tailored for a different business, but generally these 5 phases will help you begin the process of getting a more mature asset management capability in place for your software. So firstly, similar to what we discussed with hardware, you need to discover and determine what software assets exist. Again, there are some tools that can go off and look at the devices that are on your network and come back with a list of all the software items. I've been through this process as an operational manager and also helping clients in the past. That can be quite complicated. A lot of the tools that go off and discover will come back and will tell you that you have, for example, 15 different versions of Adobe across your whole enterprise. And what is very confusing is understanding the differences between those versions of Adobe and what is actually the same version of Adobe, because the tool might tell you that there's 3 different versions with the same name and they've all got different version numbers. So there is quite a bit of complexity that can be built into these data dumps that come from the tools that check to see what software is out there. That's why the next stage, which is analyze and reconcile, is very important. That's a key step to analysing the data that's come back and identifying the pluses and minuses with respect to the software licenses that you actually have paid for, and a great opportunity to identify any rogue software that might be out there. And in a lot of businesses and a lot of work that we've done with our clients, you're always going to get a small number, hopefully, of software systems that have been installed but not appropriately informed, communicated through to IT. So this is a good opportunity to find those software items that may be a gotcha or a non-compliance. The next step is to remediate, and that is to right-size the license use and remove any unlicensed or rogue software elements. And we've helped organisations go through this process. Ultimately then helps you baseline and provide transparency and confidence that the business is compliant. The fourth step is then to develop a framework, because it's no use you remediating and spending all this effort completing phases 1 to 3, and then shortly after that having all that good work undone by having no overarching SAM framework or process. The framework needs to include things like roles, responsibilities, policies, procedures, and processes. And then the final step, once you've got your framework in place, is to establish the ongoing SAM capability. And it is very important that as part of this capability, you include regular metric checks to ensure that your processes and framework are effective. Beyond getting control of your SAM implementation or capability, you may also wish to consider publishing and making clear to the business what is approved software. So many organisations have what they call an approved software list, which is essentially a list of software that the IT group has comfortably negotiated licenses and is allowable for business users to download and use. And it also helps identify potentially software that is not approved. Beyond control, you can then look to automate the ability for users to request and install software. Some of the more mature organisations actually have the ability to select from the approved software list and automatically have that software install on a person's PC. You may wish to consider establishing a process for considering evaluating non-approved software. So at some stage, someone in the business or someone will request that something gets added to the approved software list, and you may need a process for considering that software being added to the list. Looking at tools and systems to help automate and reduce human effort is another possible element you can look at after you've implemented your SAM capability. It's important to consider longer term goals and maturity of your capability over time. So don't think after your initial investment that that's it. You need to continue to refine and uplift your maturity. And an effective SAM capability requires a change in culture too. So this isn't just about the tools and the process. It also requires that all business and IT users appreciate that there's a cultural change when it comes to managing assets as well. So that is the section on asset management. If there's any questions, please send them through, or I'll have a quick sip of water. Okay, moving on to IT management, optimising your IT management. So IT management has many different elements to consider when looking for optimisation opportunities. Some things that you can use to investigate and analyse in this space. The first one is benchmarking. I know that some organisations do this quite well and others don't do it at all. However, annual benchmarking can help you identify areas of your IT that are worthy of further analysis to determine if there's optimization opportunities. So there is plenty of benchmarking data out there. Some is by subscription. Gartner generally has good benchmarking data and requires a subscription. There are other benchmarking sources that you can use, but benchmarking can help you look at your IT and compare where you are against others in your market, industry, and the same size IT function that you might have. So benchmarking can be a very good tool for helping optimize your IT management. The second area to consider would be to critically analyze the way in which your business, your IT is run, and look at opportunities to run it like a business. So determine how it can be run more like a business within a business. What parts of IT can benefit from improved transparency and business-like metrics. If you think of your IT as a business in itself, what elements can you identify that will help improve the output and optimization of that function with the right metrics and transparency in reporting. If you're not in IT and you're actually in finance or strategy or operations, a way in which you can optimize your IT management is actually invite IT to the table. I speak to many different clients, and IT groups can sit in many different areas within a business. Sometimes the CIO or IT manager is part of the management or executive team. In other scenarios, the IT leader or manager sits within corporate services or another part of the organisation. Now, if they're not invited to the table, the management table, the executive table, then there might be opportunities being missed to make their delivery effective and better align support and services to the business. So critically look at the way in which IT interacts with the levels of management within your organisation, and if you think there's an opportunity, invite them to the table to get closer to the business strategy and planning processes. Some additional areas to cover in IT management is to critically assess all of your IT services and identify what might be non-core services for possible outsourcing. So not every IT department can do every element of IT well, and sometimes the demand from the business actually exceeds the ability of IT to deliver. So if there's areas that you don't believe are core services anymore, then look at possibly outsourcing these. And an area that is a good example of this is the rise of cloud computing. So businesses in the past would have had to have bought their own hardware and run a server and maintain a server and storage, and that required somewhere to store that server in a room or a cupboard somewhere. And cloud has now essentially outsourced what is a non-core service, so that that can actually be provided on a as needs basis. Another opportunity is to review your IT labour and contractor workforce. Is there an opportunity to convert contractors to term contracts or negotiate better rates because of collective spend? So if you've got a large IT shop and you've actually been using contractors or a number of contractors from a single supplier, is there an opportunity to consolidate the spend that you've actually paid to that supplier and go and have a conversation about some better rates to optimise your spend in that space? Don't be afraid to look to your own IT team for ideas or opportunities for improved service delivery and support. So at times we all get very busy with the day-to-day doing of IT, and it can be quite difficult to lift the eyes up and have a look at opportunities to do things better. And I generally refer this to working on the business or working in the business. In most IT teams, there'll be some people with some ideas. Sometimes they don't feel comfortable to put those ideas forward. Don't be afraid to open up the conversation to determine if there are some great ideas out there, opportunities that can be investigated and potentially acted on to optimise the management of your IT. Another area to consider is consider adopting a lean methodology, including training staff and embedding lean in the IT team culture as well. So the concepts within lean are very useful across many different elements of business, including IT. And I've seen some clients who have rolled out lean training to every IT person, no matter what their role is, and they've put that to good use by then using the lean methodology to determine areas of their own IT service delivery that could be improved. And I think that was a very fantastic approach to take, in which they took a world recognised methodology and they applied it to their own delivery of services, and they were able to gain efficiencies and optimise what they did, but they also trained everyone in the process as they were rolling out lean across the whole business. A very clever approach. If there's any questions. Okie doke. We have the next slide. We're moving on to self-service. Over the last 10, 15 years, as IT has continued to pervade business users and business people on a day-to-day basis, and as the younger generations who are digital natives rather than digital immigrants have come through, the savviness of business users has continued to increase. We're all getting very used to being pushed to a portal with your electricity provider or your mobile phone provider to essentially request services. Banks are obviously reducing branches and pushing people to digital channels. So there's opportunities for IT organisations to consider these opportunities as well. So this section will talk about what you might want to consider in assessing self-serve opportunities for IT. If you get this right, then you're actually able to increase the amount of self-service that your business users are able to achieve. Investing in this area can actually free up your IT resources to focus on much higher value-added tasks. So we all know that IT resourcing is finite. Unfortunately, it's not endless, and if your IT team are busy every day being consumed by small tactical processes and tasks that could easily be completed by the business user, then there's an opportunity there to free them up from that and to get them working on some things that might add actually greater value. So where do you start with this type of initiative? Well, the first question to ask yourself is, do you have any statistics to evaluate opportunities? So statistics and some data will give you a great insight into where a lot of menial requests come from, how many there are, and what type of effort is possibly being consumed by them. But it does rely on quality service desk data. So if you don't have quality service desk data, you may wish to start looking at better capture so that you can then utilize that information to then evaluate self-service opportunities. Quality statistics will also help identify commonly requested support service types that can be then considered for self-service. So this is an important area to begin the process of enabling greater self-service in your business. So just to give you an idea as to some ideas or common self-service support and service types, so that you can visualize this a bit more, is password resets and recovery. So a lot of IT groups can be absolutely consumed with password resets, and there's no greater time that happens than after the Christmas New Year break. So in my experience of working with IT operational teams, people go away for 2 or 3 weeks. They all come back on the 11th or the 15th of January and generally have forgotten their password. So what do? They call up IT to help them reset the password. If you're working in a large organisation and you've got a couple of hundred people all calling at once, guess what? Your IT support service desk will be smashed for a couple of days as they try to get through all the resets and recovery. So you will have, all of you will have seen with access that you have to other websites that there's generally the ability to reset or recover your password. and that is a great way of making the user self-serve to fix their issue in that they've forgotten their password. So why not look at this opportunity within your own business? The development of FAQs, frequently asked questions, is also another great way of allowing users to self-serve. So if you concentrate on building up a knowledge base of generally what are frequently asked questions from business users, then rather than taking up the time of someone on the phone to answer that question over and over and over again, then they can go and actually find the answer that they're looking for from a FAQ online. As mentioned before, there is opportunities for business users to select and automatically install approved software. So that is a great way of reducing the requirements of a support person to go off and connect to a person's desktop and then download the software on their behalf. Why not allow the business user, if it's approved, to download it themselves? There's opportunities to share the responsibility of asset ownership with users. And if you are able to accurately allocate a device to a user and then provide them with a portal that lists all of the devices that they've got, you can essentially make them responsible for making sure that the laptop and the mobile device and the Surface or whatever it is, they're all attributed to that user. And if the person doesn't have that asset, they can easily contact the service desk to let them know that they don't no longer have that asset. So there's an opportunity there to self-serve in asset ownership. Having the ability to track status updates on requests and support tickets is also a great way of reducing calls to the service desk if they can go in and self-serve. Being able to select hardware devices for purchase from a catalogue is another great way of allowing business users to self-serve when they need a new device. And lastly, if you get to a certain level of maturity, you can actually provide the ability for users to get access to files, folders, or applications through a self-service mechanism rather than requesting the access and then waiting possibly hours or days before the access is granted. With a mature organisation, that is possible. And what are the barriers to self-service? Definitely the barriers that businesses are faced with are underlying systems and tools to enable such a thing. There are some great systems out there that can provide this capability. To be able to do this, information systems need to be kept current and up to date. So the process of keeping self-service up to date is important. User experience needs to be considered. Try to avoid build it and they will come and a set and forget approach. Users will gravitate to simple and easy to use interfaces, and if you make it too complex, they won't come to what was built. You need to consider that. Communication and change management needs to be absolutely a key consideration. Otherwise, no one will know what you've built in a self-service capacity. And you need to appreciate that different users may want to self-serve in different ways. So offer multiple paths of getting to the same outcome. Some people like everything to be digital. Others may actually want a different way of getting to a service request or self-serving themselves. Finally is what to avoid when implementing a IT cost optimization process or initiative. Avoid cutting the wrong costs, understand what is priority, the OPEX, CAPEX, or both. Keep one eye on your risks and imperative services like cyber, so don't go off and cut services or optimize IT and elevate risks that you may have in the cyberspace. Don't launch these types of initiatives in isolation, communicate and engage stakeholders. Understand that some cost reductions rely on stable, standardized and mature services. Don't focus just on the dollars. It is an important element. However, there are other elements that need to be considered when looking at IT cost optimization, and don't create technology debt for the sake of saving dollars. So there's no value in creating a debt that needs to be remediated or paid off in the future for the sake of saving a few bucks at the time of trying to optimize your IT. So that is the end of the slide deck, and we're coming right on to the 45-minute mark. If there are any questions, please send them through in the next 30 seconds or so. If there are no questions, then thank you very much for your attendance today. I hope that there was something in there that gives you some food for thought. and you may take back to your individual businesses to consider and think about when looking to optimize your IT. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.